All right, welcome to round two. We won the die roll. Seems like our opponent does have a companion. Definitely always important to note what companion your opponent reveals. And as we go through this league, I will talk through, depending on what they reveal or not, and how they mulligan, what deck I estimate they are on. All right, they reveal Lurrus. So while the Delver deck has gotten some attention, it's still most likely that this is a burn deck. So evaluating our hand against burn. Most likely we turn one Serum Visions. If we find a land, we have to dig for a land. And then if we find we might have to fetch Shock for a Fatal Push. So this hand is bad against burn. No Force of Negation. Doesn't have multiple lands. Double Fatal Push is awkward. If this is a Druid deck or something along those lines, this hand's not bad. This hand's definitely super close. With London Mulligan, I think we're going to throw it back, though. If it was like a black source, like a Dark Slick Shores, I would definitely be much more excited about keeping because then it's painless and that puts you in a much better spot against a lot of the decks in the meta right now. All right, this hand's great. We will go ahead and keep. See if Bobble can get us some information. Normally, you want to Bobble trick yourself with like a fetch land, but here I think it's actually pretty relevant. All right, Sacred Foundry, so we know for sure this is Burn or Prowess. But that allows us to play accordingly and look for a removal spell. Unearth is really good, so we're going to keep it on top. The reason Unearth is so good is because Lurrus is one of our best cards in the matchup. So being able to play Lurrus, get back a Bauble, something along those lines, is very powerful. Suspend Riftbolt, exactly where we want our opponent to be. Let's do a Bauble trick on ourselves now. Opt. Okay. Let's go ahead and play Watergrave. So when Burn doesn't play a turn 1 threat, it is very likely, especially if they kept their 7, that they have a turn 2 Eidolon. So we are expecting that here, which means we're going to be opting to look for a removal spell. And if we find one, we are in a great spot. If we do not find one, we are in a precarious position. But the upside of Eidolon is Force of Negation will also be a great card to find here. Just simply for the reason that if we are able to play Lurrus and Goblin Guide, okay, definitely very good for us here that they played Goblin Guide. All right, we'll let it attack first. Well, there's not really a great reason not to just opt now, and it'll give them a little bit less information about what we want or what we don't want. Really, what we want is removal and counter spells. So Drown in the Loch is a good draw here. All right, Delver on top. All right, so we'll go ahead and take 2. There's definitely the question of do we play Lurrus? With the Unearth, it's definitely pretty enticing. We'll be able to play Lurrus, get back a Bauble, most likely. They Lightning Bolt. Okay, so we're at 12. Assuming now they have no mana open to remove Lurrus immediately. We have a chance at hitting a Force of Negation. And really, we only get punished if we don't hit Force of Negation off the Bauble and our opponent has land Searing Blaze. Eidolon, good for them, but we do have this Drown in the Lock ready for it, which is definitely nice. See if we hit a Force Negation. Wow, definitely very lucky for us there. That was exactly what we wanted, and we are going to just be able to counter this and probably run away with the game now. This is why I think the burn matchup's so good. Even if they are using a lightning bolt here, it's okay with us. Okay. So let's go ahead and bring back Mishra's Bauble. And the reason we're doing that now is because I think there's an argument that we attack here. And the reason why we attack is because removing their creature with Lurrus is actually something that we're okay with here. We got the Bauble back, and then they block, then we unearth, and then we get to play another Bauble and have Drown the Lock up. So it ends up working out super well for us. We can even go ahead and fetch an island and deploy a Delver of Secrets as well. Because we're at a pretty safe life total, I feel comfortable with that. There are definitely some spots if we're at a lower life total where I would just lean more into Lurrus here. But in this spot, I think we can afford to get a little bit aggressive and just try to close out this game. You definitely have to be careful of your burn opponent's own Lurrus. Okay, and they just concede. They have seen enough. All right, so post-board cards that I'm interested in. We saw Unearth be fantastic there, so definitely that. The Collective Brutalities are good. Cling to Dust is just a draw spell or something that gains life in a pinch. The Fatal Pushes, and potentially the Snapcaster Mage. We'll see what we would like to cut. For cuts, I generally like to cut Delver of Secrets. I also like to cut down on Sprite Dragons, although I do advise that it's important to be careful about how many blue cards you have for Force of Negation. Let's go ahead and cut 3 Sprite Dragons regardless. Creatures are generally not great. I assume a control roll post board that really revolves around Lurrus. The upside to this is it's super effective at gaining life, and having as much interaction as possible means you're able to slow your burn opponent down. The downside and the risk is if you do let your Lurrus get path to exiled, you're very threat light, which means that if you weren't very far ahead before Lurrus was path to exiled, you're in a pretty tricky position where you basically have to hope to cobble together a combination of Sprite Dragon and Snapcaster Mage. Again, we do have 2 Unearth, which means that any type of lightning bolt on Lurrus is actually something that's a lot of times beneficial for us. Kolaghan's Command is the other card I could potentially cut if I wanted to keep more blue cards in. It has some utility in being able to kill creatures and in their draw step, making them discard a card. It also kills Lurrus. I do have access to a lot of removal spells, though. Let's go ahead and cut the Kolaghan's Command on the draw and just bring in an extra blue card. On the play, I think that it's good enough that we will go down a blue card for it. But on the draw, I enjoy having the ability to just make sure that our Force of Negations are online, as some of our most powerful hands have just, a couple lands, multiple Force of Negations, and a Bauble, and then you just kind of run away with the game from there with Lurrus. This hand's pretty fantastic here. Okay. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and keep. Don't have the immediate answer to their first threat, but we'll probably be able to spell snare them, or their turn 2 play, if it's like an Eidolon or something. And then Collective Brutality. Okay, so they don't have anything here. They did seem to want to draw their card. I'm going to hold up Spell Snare. Again, when your burn opponent doesn't have a creature on turn 1, it's just so likely that they have the Eidolon on turn 2. So I would be pretty surprised if they don't play Eidolon here, and we would get a little bit punished for not playing Serum Visions, but our hand isn't really in need of anything super specific here. I guess what we're really looking for is maybe a Mishra's Bauble, just so that our Lurrus can actually get advantage. Although Lurrus gets advantage just by having lifelink, so that's definitely something that's not worth overlooking. Drawing extra cards never hurts. Okay, Eidolon, and we get to Spell Snare it, and that's pretty great for us. All right, so this turn, barring drawing something crazy. Okay, another Collective Brutality is definitely a good draw, but I'm not sure how we're going to necessarily sequence these turns. So we could play Collective Brutality here with two modes, discarding a land, Drain and Duress. That wouldn't be bad, but we also have the opportunity to painlessly play Serum Visions and then play a Watery Grave tapped. And then if they play an Eidolon, we're able to remove the Eidolon, drain, and duress them, bringing us really far ahead. They play Lurrus next turn, which is definitely a possibility. They would get to get back a Mishra's Bauble, but then we would get to Collective Brutality and kill Lurrus, drain them, and duress them most likely. Still putting us in a great position, and if we're able to find a Mishra's Bauble of our own, then I'm pretty happy with that. So let's start with a Serum Visions. Force Negation, great. Mishra's Bauble, fantastic. Our dreams come true. Force Negation, the only problem here is we don't have a blue card. Like I said, you got to be careful about how many blue cards you go down to. For that reason, probably actually maybe should have kept the other Serum Visions on top. That was probably a misplay on my part. Let's see if we get punished. That is not what I would consider getting punished. Okay, we're gonna draw. Okay, we're not gonna play this Bauble into Eidolon. That'd be a pretty big mistake. But let's go ahead and escalate. We don't have a huge interest in red, but maybe it's just better to get a red source just in case, in which case we would discard the Drowned Catacombs. I'm not even certain we want to escalate 3 times here. We may just want to -2/-2 and duress. They have 4 cards in hand, and it doesn't seem like the drain life is super relevant, and the cards in our hand are actually pretty powerful on their own. So I don't think there's a huge reason that we need to be getting too hasty with discarding our hand away. Let's go ahead and do 2 modes. Remove Eidolon for sure. And let's look at their hand. Because we're not in a racing position, it's really just we gain 2 life is the other mode. So that's why I'm choosing to duress instead, because I'm more interested in just getting a spell out of their hand that's usually representative of 3 damage, and the oh so important Path to Exile is really the prize that we're looking for here, if we can grab one. All right, well, their hand is pretty weak. They're definitely going to be playing Lurrus next turn. I'd be surprised if they weren't. But we'll go ahead and... There's honestly an argument to take Skewer the Critics, but I think we'll take Boros Charm. The thinking behind Skewer the Critics is it's 1 mana, but only if it's enabled, only if Revolt is enabled, but it also can target creatures. Because we have the Unearth, that's a lot less scary. If we didn't have Unearth, then we would take Skewer the Critics over Boros Charm, again with the goal of protecting Lurrus. All right, Mishra's Bauble. We can probably bobble ourselves here and just see if we are going to draw a blue card or not. Fatal Push is solid, honestly. I might just end up fetch shocking and playing Fatal Push on their Lurrus just so that we can play our own Lurrus the turn afterwards. I think that's probably a fine play on our half. I will allow them to Skewer the Critics us. It'll cost us extra life, and it'll mean we can't cast red spells, but our hand is very strong as is, and I don't think that we are really in the need of drawing any more action at the moment. So we're not going to do the Fatal Push until their end step, so that they don't get to be mana efficient and Skewer the Critics us here. Okay, they drew Lava Spike, so I guess it doesn't matter. So we would, let's see. We go to 12 if we do this here. but then we get to play Lurrus. I think it's worth it. We're going to have 2 looks to draw a blue card back up for Force of Negation. But even if we don't, it's not a huge deal. Okay. If we do draw a blue card, it's fantastic for us. Cling to Dusk, also very good. This may be taking an unnecessary risk, given our current hand and how well positioned we are against them, quite honestly. It's definitely possible that we weren't supposed to be playing Lurrus there, but I think that it's unlikely we get punished. It's only Path that punishes us if we don't draw another blue card here. Okay, we did not draw a blue card, so we are exposed to a Path to Exile. Also exposed to a Searing Blaze. Skewer the Critics, totally fine. Curious as to what they have here. Just a Lava Spike, okay. Another Lava Spike, okay. We're at 6. And that means we win, effectively. It's just there's no way they're going to be able to deal with Lurrus being unearthed, especially when we have Mana Leak and Cling to Dusk back up. That's just going to be game. So now here you see the power of Unearth in this matchup. I know a lot of people really say, they're like, oh, the burn matchup's not very good. And I find that Unearth really swings the burn matchup in our favor. Without Unearth, it kind of ends up where you're in an awkward spot where you want to play Lurrus, it's your best card, but also they have so many ways to remove it. And if you don't have Force of Negation back up, then it just puts you in a really awkward spot. But with Unearth, you can safely play Lurrus and only have to worry about a very few select cards. Hopefully you had a discard spell or Collective Brutality that made sure the coast was clear, and then they remove your Lurrus, go down a card, you unearth it, have counter spells up, and the game is over. So that's our game plan against Burn, and we executed it very well both games, and that'll give us a win in match 2. See you in match 3.